Welcome to the Futurist Society podcast, where we delve into the latest advancements in technology, science, and culture. From discussions on the latest breakthroughs in AI, biotechnology, and space exploration, the Futurist Society is your window into all of the awesomeness that the future holds. Get ready to be informed and inspired as we consider the positive impact of emerging technologies on humanity. Without further ado, welcome your host, Dr. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Future Society, broadcasting from the present, but talking about the future. Today, we have Emiliano De Laurentiis, who's joining us and talking about artificial intelligence. Emiliano is a leader in artificial intelligence, as well as CEO of Knowledge Avatars, which is allowing us to learn with using artificial intelligence. So, Emiliano, welcome. Tell us a little bit about how you got into artificial intelligence.
Dr. Awesome, thank you for having me on your podcast. I appreciate the offer. Well, that's a good question. When I was in graduate school, this is many years ago, this is in the 80s, one of the areas that I studied was, even before graduate school, I was studying cognitive sciences. That was my undergraduate work. And then when I was in graduate work, we were working on a medical diagnosis already. I was at McGill University, and we were doing developing expert systems and AI systems that would help diagnose medical problems. So I did that. That was part of one of the projects I was working on, and we started looking at how to use AI in education. My graduate work was actually in educational psychology and counseling, and but my hobby was technology. I was self-taught my first programming language was Fortran. That was not self-taught, but my first self-taught language was BASIC, and then just went on from there. I decided that I saw the future. I saw that there was the intersection of pedagogy and technology and psychology. There was going to be an intersection of those three things. And so I was wondering how can we put this together? And so after I graduated with my master's in educational psychology, I brought my hobby together with my academic experience and started building a company. And so my first company was in 1981, and we had 55 employees developing educational software. And actually, we developed a chatbot. We had probably one of the first chatbots used in education in the early 80s. Published by Prentice Hall and all over the world. In fact, I got a call from a teacher in India just a couple of summers ago. He said he's still using some of my software. So I thought that was pretty cool, even though it works with floppy.
Yeah, I mean, chatbots are huge these days, right? Everybody thinks about ChatGPT, and I think it's going to be a very easy process to incorporate that into our daily lives. But what I get excited about and what I really want to happen is artificial general intelligence, where you have the ability to talk to this thing similarly like a human being, and it is seamless in the same way that Alexa has now become seamless in our daily lives. When I want to know a question, I just say, Alexa, what time is it? Alexa, what's the weather outside? Some people use Google. They say, okay, Google. Some people use Siri. And
don't say the words because all my lights will go off.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that has very easily permeated the public consciousness. And I can't wait until we get to the point where I can have a conversation with that artificial intelligence. How far do you think that we're away from that?
Yeah, but actually, I was going to say not so easily. If you think of it, Siri was introduced over 10 years ago. Apple put together a demo, a little kind of concept video in 1987. That was 36 years ago. That basically was an AI as an assistant. That in today's series is essentially what they were thinking about in 1987, and of course before 1987, because that's when they released that video. So It takes a long time. It takes about 20 years at least for ideas to go from academia to the mainstream. But even Siri, it took a long time for it to become ubiquitous. And even so, even today, how do we use things like Siri? We mainly use it for turning on the lights. That's what I use it for. Reminders, timers, things of that sort, right? We don't really have a conversation with the AI. That's coming. As you know, as you mentioned earlier, people are all excited about ChatGPT. But even ChatGPT doesn't know anything. In fact, what it is good at is it's good at simulating a good conversation. And although it can give you some good answers, you have to fact check it, because very often it will give you an answer that sounds perfectly fine, but is totally bogus. And so you have to be so now to answer your question, when are we going to get to a true AI that understands what you're talking about and keeps it in context? That's a good question. That's a question that I can't really say I have the answer to. Some people fear that we're going to get to that point. Elon Musk has mentioned that we may get to that point in the next 10 years, 10, 20 years. He fears it because then at that point, the AI may decide that humans are not useful. All of the AI today, and in the future, is going to be based on human knowledge, right? I mean, basically, it's humans. We humans have created these things. So what happens when if humans stopped creating? What happens? The AI becomes stagnant as well, right? Unless the AI start becoming creative, and that's another question.
Honestly, I'm not so much worried about stagnation or any really of the negative effects, and maybe that's naive. I feel like for me, I'm most excited about what AI can do for me. In that, when I have a train of thought and I say, I want to book a flight to Aruba and take my family on a vacation, Alexa or Siri or Google, can you check my calendar and what's the best flight? Going down like a train of thought with the ability to control research through my voice, right? I think that right now, if we wanted to do that, we would have to go on 3 different websites. We would have to cross-check this. I would have to email, the people in my office. I would have to do all sorts of these things. But research is something that I think that hopefully the artificial intelligence would be really good at, and also the ability to balance multiple tasks. I think that that's something that when I think of artificial intelligence, that's what I talk about. And lastly, like having a conversation, just like you said, not mimicking conversation, but having a conversation with that AI, really having a great personal assistant that's equivalent to a human being right now. That would be so good for so many people. I look at that as just around the corner. Is that accurate, or is that not accurate?
No, it's accurate. I've created some myself. And I think that the whole thing is to develop a symbiosis. There's like my latest theme is to have a symbiotic relationship with AI.
Yeah.
So that so the AI enhances you. Steve Jobs famously said that the computer people use the computer to empower their brain to create things, and they use TV to be passive, and to turn off their brain. They turn on their brain with computers, and that's what we can do. I think AI today can help you do that. But there's one issue though that I'm encountering myself, which is that I think that so many people are so used to being those passive absorbers of information that they don't know how to be Socratic anymore. The whole Socratic conversation thing. Our bots, people can be Socratic with them and ask questions. But I'm finding that there's a lot of students don't know what to ask. They don't have that curiosity that you would think that they would have, and those critical thinking skills are missing right now, and
Yeah,
I'm worried about that. I'm worried about how will our students, I mean, obviously it's going to be a big shift in how education works
absolutely.
with AI. And so
Yeah,
what happens when students are no longer passive, or how will we get them to be no longer to not be passive? Because most of
yeah,
education today is
yeah.
still information going to a bunch of students, right? That's how education still is today. It's
Hmm.
it's a lecturer transmitting information to a bunch of students, and whether that lecture is on computers or a lecture hall, that still is the basic model that we have today.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I hope that AI has the ability to do that, is to learn through conversation, which honestly, I think is the way that the majority of the human race learns. I think that that's how we transmitted information before there was written knowledge. I think that that's how we learned as a species for a long time. And so if I could have a conversation with this artificial intelligence, that would mimic how we learned in the past, which is something that I think that for us to achieve symbiosis, we have to understand ourselves. And I like the word
Yeah.
that you said, symbiosis, because I think that's the best outcome for artificial intelligence. Everybody has all these negative thoughts about artificial intelligence. Like even when we talk about science fiction, think about how many bad artificial intelligence there are. And you talk about artificial intelligence, the first thing that people think of is a bad thing when it comes to science fiction. But when I think about artificial intelligence, I think about people like Commander Data from Star Trek. I think about in the Green Lantern comics, there's a artificial intelligence that becomes a Green Lantern, which is like this superhero that has the ability to save lives and do all these things. And the
Behind the lantern stories.
yeah, well, I mean, I follow a lot of science fiction. I think that one of the great things about science fiction is it gives us really interesting ideas for the future and like how we can go. And I think that the artificial intelligence that I see from science fiction is a symbiosis that allows us to become more than what we are right now. And that's something that's really exciting to me. I think that when I look at all of the things that we've learned in the past 20 years, I think that I get hopeful for my children. I don't get negative about
Right.
about my children. Like there's so much negative aspects of technology, but in general, we are continuing to get better at all of the things that we put our effort and energy into. So I think that when I look at artificial intelligence, one of the other things that I'm going to just take a sidetrack here, is the ability to teach my children. I think that we're going to have children that are able to have access to information more than ever before. And if we can have the artificial intelligence teach them through conversation, they could be more intelligent than any other generation that we've had in the past, right? And that's something that I really get excited about. I know that some of your background, so let's just take a sidetrack on that and tell me, when you think about pedagogy, when you think about the way that we're going to teach our children in the future, how does artificial intelligence play a role in that?
Well, let me just refer to one thing as well. Like there's a lot of talk right now about ChatGPT and how students are using it to cheat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's so we go from so and people are all worried about that, and I'm saying, what's there to be worried about? The problem is not the student, and the problem is the educational system. The educational system was designed to be to be a way to mass educate people, and that is changing. AI makes it possible for you to have individual tutors. Imagine if every student has their own tutor. Now that is exciting, because now you
Absolutely.
can every student can have. We all come to education with different backgrounds, with
Mm-hmm.
different bases, with different emotional structures. We're some of it. In fact, I think that most of the educational problems that students have to do with maybe not mental health, but certainly emotional health. And
Mm-hmm.
if they're overly stressed, they're just not ready for to learn. And so an AI can help them meet those knowledge gaps and those emotional gaps, can help them they can have a conversation with the AI about what they need right now. I need to learn. I need to have some information about whatever, history or geography or math. I mean, we still, especially with young students, we still have to have some kind of structure, but the nature of that learning is going to be very different. Teachers have been asking me, since ChatGPT became public, teachers have been asking me, what do we do? How do we teach now? And I say, well, that's not the question. Is not how do you teach, but it's how do you test, or how do you? The question is, what is the nature of what you're doing? Why are students cheating in the first place? Why are they there? Are they there just for an A grade? Or do you want to have a student who doesn't really understand the content? Like a lot of education is learning on a deadline, right?
Yeah.
and the reason students want to achieve is because they're overwhelmed. They just don't have the time to learn the content properly. So one thing that changed.
Social issues aside, right? Because I think that there's a lot of debate of how terrible the current schooling system is. Something that you alluded to, what is your thoughts on the best way to teach people? You alluded to the Socratic method earlier. I think that that's something that is definitely been shown to really drill in concepts. At least that's how I was taught in medical school, when we would have conversations about a patient. Our attendings would ask us questions and go down these thought processes so that we could learn based on their questions. What about you? What do you feel like is kind of the model? How is your AI teaching your students?
Model is very important. So I developed a pedagogical model called FEED. So FEED is an acronym for feedback, experiences, examples, and definitions. So if you look at those four things, all of science and education has shown that those are the four things. If you want to learn any concept, whatever it is, how to identify a heart, how to do a formula, whatever. A definition, what is that? It's a generalization, right? So that's the final goal. You want to be able to take that concept and understand it no matter which context you're in. If you have this kind of a cup, you want to be able to identify that as a cup no matter what the shape of the cup. That's a generalization. Examples are many different cups. Show me many different cups of different shapes, with handles, without handles. These are all cups. And in fact, by the way, what I'm talking about is actually it's exactly how machine learning works too.
Right.
That's how we're bots. Right? Then experiences. Have an experience, right? Have an experience, and where you need to identify cups to prove to yourself, to prove that you have learned something. And then feedback is the immediate feedback that you get that tells you, yes, that is a cup or it's not a cup. So that model works no matter what you're teaching, no matter what, and actually that's based into the DNA of our bots. It's an important element because a lot of people don't know how to teach. A lot of one of my first jobs was at the Center for Teaching and Learning Services at McGill University, and our job was to improve the teaching of the professors there, because the professors are not teachers. They're there to do research, and they are experts at their field. And for the most part, they present.
Well, I take a little bit offense to that because I'm a professor. I mean, I feel like I'm there to teach.
There are exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule,
Yeah, it's publish or perish, which is a term that everybody hears about. Like to become a professor and to get funding, you have to research and get grants and stuff like that. And so that tends to be the focus of what a professor's career is about, not the actual teaching, right? So I get it. I was just being facetious.
Yeah, some schools focus on teaching, some schools focus on research. If the focus is on research, they really don't care how the teaching happens. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So in coming back to the feeds concept, just so for clarification, So that's how you teach your bots, but is that also how you teach your students? And
no, that's how the bots teach. That's how the bots teach the students.
gotcha. Okay. When does the feeds level start? Like, when does it start becoming effective?
Yeah, I think the pedagogical model itself is good at any age group, for any age. But the question is, what kind of information do we present? Like, what kind of videos, what kind of examples, what kind of activities? So, for example, we partner with different organizations to develop educational products, and one of the companies I'm partnering with is developing an escape room in virtual reality.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. This is for middle school, and it's the first product is going to be where's India in the Middle East, and basically,
oh, so it's teaching geography too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you have to answer a lot of questions. You have to solve these puzzles in order to go from one room to another. So it's just like any escape room. Or who's the game master? How can we make this scalable? Well, the game master is one of our knowledge avatar bots, and the bot is going to be, it answers questions and acts as the game master to help students learn what they need to learn to be able to go from one room to another room.
I think that tapping into our innate learning models as a human being is really important. I think one of the things that, like, again, we used to teach people is geography through understanding things in relationship to each other in 3 dimensions, right? Like, so I can look at a map and I can say, okay, India is next to Pakistan. It's also next to Bangladesh, and for me, that's 2-dimensional. But if I actually fly there and I understand, like I visit Pakistan and I visit Bangladesh, it's a totally different concept, right? Like the people that grew up and live in Europe can pick out all of the states on all the countries on a map. I might have trouble with that because I grew up in America, but I can definitely point out all the states on the U.S. because I've gone around the U.S. And some people that are in the U.S. that never leave their town may never do that because that that experience, that trip, right? In the same way that when we were base human species, we were telling people how to find the best hunting grounds or to find the best berries to eat. That's something that's kind of just ingrained in our consciousness. That's one of the things that I think that virtual reality will be really great for, so that you can actually make those trips virtually. And to couple that with artificial intelligence, I think is really sharp, so that
back to your question of the age group. Going back to your question of the age group, if you go even younger, if you go into elementary school, then maybe what we want there are more physical bots. Maybe get the kids away from the 2-dimensional screen. Maybe what we do is we do more VR, but also maybe what we do is we get more physical bots. So we can incorporate our technology into that. We can incorporate AI in the bots and have kids interact with those. In the early days of technology, I used to work with Logo. I don't know if you're familiar. Logo is a language that was designed to give students a constructive experience. So they had a robot, which was a turtle, and the turtle had a pen in its belly, right? And you could program your computer, which was in those days was not wireless, but was connected with a long wire, and you could program that robot to draw on the floor. So you put paper on the floor, and it would make these geographic drawings. So you learn about circles and triangles, but you're not just learning about geography. You're learning about how to program and how to do critical thinking. That was all Seymour Papert work that was from MIT, and I learned. In fact, I learned the language Logo on the mini computer in those days, which is about the size of a refrigerator, and from Logo Systems International, which is a company that was based in Montreal. It was originally Seymour Papert was at MIT in Cambridge.
That's where I live. Tell me more about this guy. What was he teaching?
Seymour Papert. Yeah. He was at the. He was. Don't remember exactly his role, but he was an educational psychologist. I can't remember exactly which department he worked at, but he was.
But
he developed the concept of constructivism, which means that you create things and you learn by creating. And so this logo language was a main system. And I used to teach that when I was in graduate school and right after graduate school. I used to teach logo and similar languages to schools throughout and I was living in Montreal at the time, so I was teaching it in the Montreal area. And the beauty of that is that kids learned. It was a simple enough language that the very young kids, and we're talking about elementary school, could learn how to program. And that's critical thinking. It requires a lot of problem solving. In fact, today you have there's a language called a snap, and which is based on the concept of logo. It's an even simpler language, but it's basically like Lego blocks, and you put together these Lego blocks, and that's how and then that's how you program. And with Snap, you can also, in fact, Snap is now run out of Berkeley in California, and with Snap you can program bots, but you can also program things on the internet or just on your computer. The idea of Snap is by doing, students are learning critical thinking skills, but they're also learning about the subject. So if you're trying to program something having to do with geography, you have to learn about the geography. Unfortunately, it seems that model is in decline. I was at a conference in Montreal in the last fall, and I met the current president of Logo Systems, and they're shutting down.
So when you're talking about these systems, these are programming models, not pedagogy. So just is it pedagogy or pedagogical?
But it's pedagogy.
Pedagogy. So the pedagogy, is that a learning model, or is it
remember in feed, one of the E's is experiences. Okay. So if I show you what a cup is, that's an example. If I describe a cup, it's a vessel with a handle, that's the definition. And if I ask you to draw me a cup, that's an experience. So if I ask you to program a robot to draw a cup, that's also an experience. If I ask you to take some pottery and make me a cup, that's also an experience. Feedback is the teacher saying, wow, that's a good cup. That is really a cup. Or saying, no, that doesn't look like a cup, looks more like a glass to me. It is, or like a chalice or something else. So this is what a cup should look like. So that's basically the model of education that works for no matter what you're teaching. So what we're talking about with the logo, for example, but programming, that's an experience, and you still have to teach something. Like if we used to give students tasks such as develop a mandala, I think it's called, so they say, well, what is that? And what is it supposed to look like? And how do we represent that mathematically? How are we going to now program that? And we have to learn certain things in the language logo, such as recursion. We have to learn these concepts because, for example, with that kind of programming, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. So basically, that's recursion. So these are very high level concepts that students were learning, and we're talking about elementary school students. 5th grade, 4th grade, they could learn some very high level concepts. I was teaching fun stuff like that when he was in third grade, 4th grade. The schools were not teaching him that, but I must say he's not a computer scientist, so that's I think something worked.
Do you have any kids at all?
Well, I just mentioned my son. Yes, my son is.
So how did you teach him when he was young? Like what is?
Well, he had a lot of examples of logo. Lego. Lego was a great tool for us because he needed to I felt he needed to just, I mean, every student should be able to manipulate the real world in three dimensions. So he did a lot of that. But we also did robot programming. We did uh, other forms of 2D programming. So he was immersed in the world of math and science and programming from very early on.
Yeah,
And
I have a daughter myself, and at the time of this taping, she's 20 months old, and I am very excited for her to have a friend that is a robot. I think that having she's just asking so many questions, she's pointing out so many things that honestly I can't keep up with her curiosity. And I think that having somebody that has an inexhaustible ability to give her information as she needs it would make her more intelligent than I think that I would have the ability to be at that age. Like I think that we're always surprised, me and my wife, about how much she's able to absorb and how much she's able to pick up on. And that's from a lot of time that's spent, doing nothing, which I think is important. But on the same token, I feel like I'm the limiting step. I can't give her the information at the pace that she's able to take it in. And so if we have a robot or, some other thing that's able to give that to her at her pace, I think that's going to be an incredible opportunity for the human race. I think that every child would have this ability to maximize their potential.
Yeah. I think going back to your earlier question about how young kids can be, or how to get, we're talking about how a lot of students today are very passive in their absorption of information, that they're not very Socratic, or they don't question. I think that's what this our educational system has been doing to students. It's been setting them up to be more passive recipients of information, rather than active learners. And by active learner, I mean, like your child is an active learner. We are such a dominant species because we are not just the most intelligent species, but we are curious. Why do we want to go to space? People ask me that question sometimes. Why do we want to go to space? We have so many problems on Earth. No, it's because it's part of the human species. It's part of our nature to want to explore, to learn. If you have that question, it's because you've lost your sense of curiosity, of wanting to learn and explore. And that's what we are. That is the human condition.
I hear that all the time. Why do I have to know this? And I look at every time I hear that from one of my young doctors that I work with, it kind of kills me inside. Why would you not want it? That's right. It's like such a foreign concept. I wish that I could know everything. The limit for me is not the knowledge. The limit for me is my own capacity to digest it all. I can't remember everything. I can't read 24 hours a day, but I want to learn as much as possible. And that's something that I think that artificial intelligence would be able to feed us whenever we wanted. How many times are you in the car and you think of something and you want to go down this thought process, and you're in the car, you can't indulge that, but if you had a person that's next to you, if we were driving in a car to 3 hours away to maybe a vacation spot, if me and Emiliano were in the car together, I would sit here and I would have the same conversation that we're having right now, and I would just pick your brain about all the different things that about artificial intelligence that I don't know, right? But I don't have you in my car all the time, right? It's something that's a limiting step for me, is I'm limited by that. And even if I were to put on a podcast or listen to a book on tape, just like what you're saying, that's passive information. That's just me absorbing passively, but even when I'm listening to that book or when I'm listening to a podcast, I have my own questions that I want to know about that the person might not ask. And so I really look forward to that day when, even for myself, like I can learn through the advent of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, 30 or more years ago, 40 years ago, we were already talking about implanting chips in our brains to enhance our brain's capabilities, maybe as a memory chip or a connection to some other. I mean, the internet didn't exist yet, so people were not yet writing about the internet. But and that's amazing, by the way. That statement in and of itself is amazing. To think that the internet did not exist just 40 years ago.
I know.
And today, the internet really represents the sum of human knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? And that is what AI can do today. AI can represent for you the sum of human knowledge and teach it to you, and or give, have it be responsive. And then, of course, the next big question is: there's a lot of false information out there, a lot of unreliable information. So how do we sort through all that? And that's where you have to be the kind of bots that you're working with.
Yeah. Honestly, like I think that the truth always wins out. Like you could have.
In general, yes, I think you're right. Yeah. In general, I think you're right.
So when you look at so one of the things that you said that I think that is really powerful is that the internet only was developed, however many years ago, and now it's a permanent thing. It's something that some people consider to be a right, like here in Cambridge, like they're talking about how internet is a right, and I feel like that's quickly permeated through human consciousness, through human society. And that's what I think that artificial intelligence will do. Like, I think that, 40 years from now, it's going to be so.
And by the way, the internet was not even part of a lot of science fiction. I think it was just
exactly.
I think it was just only Jules Verne, I think, had an AI where, not an AI, but a story where he had something that's similar to an ATM. I think it was, I believe, Jules Verne. That had an ATM in it where you could access information. But the basic concept of the internet was not pervasive. It did not exist in science fiction until the internet actually started. Until we actually had the internet.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think, I look at science fiction as kind of like a guidepost, but for us, it's really, reality is becoming science fiction now, and it's outpacing science fiction, and there's so many different things that we don't even know the repercussions of until it actually comes around. And that's why I think that a lot of like the negative talk on AI is kind of doomsday sayers. Like they don't really realize that there could be a lot of benefits to this. Those repercussions can be positive. And I really feel like that's something that when I look at artificial intelligence, it's something that's going to be. So just a quick detour on science fiction. You alluded to Jules Verne. When you think about artificial intelligence, what is the science fiction that you think that people should think about so that they get a really hopeful view of how this thing is going to play out?
I was particularly inspired by the Isaac Asimov robot series.
Yeah,
I think that
was a good one.
Certainly the one, because they have the 3 laws of robotics. Mm-hmm. 3 laws, yeah. I haven't read it, and they have there were some issues, obviously some problems that had to be solved and so forth. But for the most part, the robots were companions. In some cases, they were superior to humans, and then they had to hide from humans, right, because of their superior nature. And but they were also empathetic. So it was a very positive representation of robots and AI that I think, and it was balanced. It wasn't all bad. Like, I think the Terminator series turned bots.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
The Terminator series is like what everybody thinks of when they think about artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And maybe we need to blame Mary Shelley, with Frankenstein, right? Because
Yeah.
if you think of it, it's Frankenstein over and over again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly popularity of the Terminator series has done a lot of like negative talk for AI. I mean, I think that there's real problems. It certainly could be an existential threat, but so could nuclear energy, right? Like I think that science in general is a tool, and that tool could be used for positive or it could be used for negative. And I think that especially these days, like we're just so skeptical about technology because we've had like social media, I think was a poorly designed concept and has affected us negatively on many levels throughout society. But for the most part, the majority of technology, in my opinion, has been positive. I think that it's, air conditioning is like changed the world, and, like sanitation has changed the world. There's so many different amazing technologies that have improved society.
This podcast is changing the world, and the idea that we can now the idea that we can speak. I'm here in New York State. You're in Massachusetts, and we can talk face to face and communicate this way.
Yeah.
Really, this only became so ubiquitous since COVID. If you think of it, it was a need, but before
Absolutely.
that, I was struggling to get people to meet with me by video. Even in general business, people didn't want to meet with a video camera. They wanted to have a regular phone call or meet face to face. But since COVID, people have changed their attitude about that. And I have conversations with my 88-year-old mother every week by face to face. We had it during COVID. It really helped her emotionally. It helped her, it helped to keep her healthy. She even underwent surgery during COVID, but was able to recover a lot faster, I think, because we had these conversations, and other people that she talks to people all over the world, and she's all she needs is an iPad.
Yeah. I had this other guy on a few days ago that he was a social scientist, and he was talking about that the lack of face-to-face communication is a problem. Nowadays we have all of this like teleconferencing and everything like that, and you still need that component in your life, which I tend to agree with. But I think that they're not mutually exclusive. Like we did not have those things that you're talking about available to us 15 years ago, and so I think that's a benefit. I don't think that it takes away from the ability for me to contact my distant relatives on my day-to-day. Like I had a dinner party yesterday. We had a great conversation. I got that face-to-face ability. I was literally just doing this, but with human beings, and we shared interaction. So you can still have that, but then you can also expand your communication radius. You can talk with people halfway across the world. I think that that's something to be proud of.
Well, there's a lot to be said, for touch. Human touch is extremely important. We know a lot of the research and psychological research shows that. So yeah, but all I'm saying is that there's a time when people just communicated by voice and no visual contact. You can see the other person's eyes. You can see their facial expressions. You kind of had to guess all. And
you were limited to a landline. You were limited to one place where you had to pick up the phone like this. And I think that it's great to remember how far we've come.
Yeah, absolutely. So technology has definitely, I think, for the most part, improved our lives and the quality of our lives. And I think AI will do the same, and is already doing the same. So you'll have a lot of negative stories like, these people have faked this person's face, or they faked this person's music and created. Well, we need some checks and balances. Perhaps we need some regulation of some sort as well. The bots that I create have some of these checks and balances. So, for example, if somebody tries to swear at them, they'll respond with, "No, this is inappropriate." It'll say this is inappropriate. If you want to have other kinds of inappropriate talk, whether it's violence or sex or whatever, it will say the same thing, because we're an educational organization. So it'll come back and say this is inappropriate, and we explicitly programmed it so that the bot does respond to those kinds of messages rather than just allowing it to go crazy, right? So you need some of these checks and balances in a lot of our technologies, as we do with nuclear power, so that's really what.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that in general, whenever a new technology comes out, we should think about, okay, how is this going to affect us, and how do we make sure that the negative aspects don't affect us going forward. But so we're coming close to the end of our time together, Emiliano. I did want to end with something that I normally do with all my guests. 3 questions that I thought of as we were talking that I really want to get the expert opinion from. So number 1, we talked a little bit about science fiction. We talked a little bit about artificial intelligence. When you think about the artificial intelligence in science fiction, what is a book other than Isaac Asimov's robot series that you would recommend to someone to read to kind of get an idea of like what you hope that artificial intelligence is able to achieve?
That's a good question. It starts off with a robot, but then he has the whole all of the robot series that they're basically murder mysteries, right? But with robots as characters in the stories. That's what is good. What's really good about it is that it has that. But I do have an answer to your question now that I've given it 3 more seconds of thought. I definitely think everybody should read Frankenstein.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is because Frankenstein is a tortured creation, and so the story is not just it's not just one-sided. It was looking at it from the perspective of the creation itself, of the robot. And he's not a robot, but you know what I mean, of the creation themselves.
Yeah.
So we need.
So I'm going to give you my answer now, which is I would really recommend that people read the Vision series, which is a comic book created by Tom King. It's really beautiful. And I think that when I think of the benefits of artificial intelligence, I think about the Vision from the Avengers that is on the side of life, right? Like he has the ability to look at human beings and look at something as this is something that should be treasured and protected, and we want to make sure that we help that species thrive. So that's my answer. The second question that I wanted to ask you, you're an expert in learning development. This is a personal question, actually. I'm putting my kid into preschool, and like the more that I read about Montessori, the more that I get really interested in it. So how do you feel about Montessori? Is that something that is good or bad, or how do you feel about that?
I'll give you a general answer to that. I looked into it to some degree myself for my own child. And I also, but I'm not completely up to date with Montessori, so I wouldn't want to give you a very specific recommendation. On the other hand, what is important in education? I've been involved with private schools, and I've been both a teacher there as well as a parent and on the board and so forth. And what is And very often the teachers from the public school will go to the private school and vice versa, right? So the same teachers. so what is the quality of what is it that makes that school special? And I think what it is, for the most part, is class size and the dedication of the teachers to the students, to help the students with their specific problems.
Yeah,
because everybody's different. So if Montessori is doing that for your child, then that is a good thing. Most private schools do have a smaller student teacher ratio. That is very important, because it's just a matter of logic. If you have too many students, you can't deal with them. You can't deal with all the individual needs of those students. You're going to be broadcasting more rather than interacting more, as we said, in that Socratic level. Yeah. And I think Montessori, again, I don't remember the specifics, but I think they're focused more on the individual needs of the student.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's good information, that you should focus on the quality of teachers and then the student to teacher ratio, as opposed to a certain model of learning,
right,
which is interesting. That's a good thing to know. Okay, so last question. Knowledge avatars is bringing artificial intelligence to teaching. Where do you see artificial intelligence and teaching being in, let's say, 10 years? When you look at the interaction between students and artificial intelligence, where do you hope that it goes?
Yes. So where I hope is that it goes is that every teacher will have their own AI as a teaching assistant, an AI that knows their content, the way they teach, and has their information, as well as maybe the sum of human knowledge. Right. So the internet is a sum of human knowledge, right? And there's a lot of stuff out there. But you could have an AI that also knows how you teach and knows the information that you want to impart to your students, and acts as your teaching assistant. That is my vision for education, where every teacher will have their own teaching assistant. And now, if you have a class of 30 students or 20 students, you could handle those 3 students that have like really deep problems that the AI cannot handle. You can work with those 3 students, and the rest of the class could be working on projects, interesting projects, and access your knowledge via that AI, which is your teaching assistant. Right? And that way, everybody gets that individualized attention, even though the human teacher is not quite available at that time, because they're dealing with those 3 students who are really having problems, or having deeper problems.
I really hope that's available in 10 years. I think that's really going to be such a benefit for society. That's a really cool and optimistic view of the future, which I really appreciate. So thank you for joining us and sharing your vision of the future on the Futurist Society. For anyone who wants to follow Emiliano De Laurentiis, just look at Knowledge Avatars or follow him on his LinkedIn. He's really doing some really great and amazing stuff. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the future. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, Dr. Austin. It was an awesome talk.
We appreciate you taking part in today's episode. Take this chance to reimagine a better future by joining a community of futurists who strive for a remarkable world. Be a part of this growing network and contribute to making the world a more positive place. Visit thefuturistsociety.net and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a drop of hopeful futurism.